Tomorrow we'll officially open the retreat because I understand still some people are yet to arrive. But for tonight, I would like to talk. I would like to talk about the teaching of the Buddha and the practice. And for many of you, this is probably not new information. But the Dhamma is good to hear repeatedly. The teachings of the Buddha include three basic parts. This practice of meditation that we do here was taught by the Buddha. So I want to put it in the context of the Buddha's teachings as a whole. He taught the training of morality or sila, the training of concentration or concentration or samadhi, and the training of wisdom or panya in Pali. The training of morality is restraint of body and speech so that we don't harm others. And these are the rules for us. We took the rules of a yogi. The minimum is 5 precepts. If a person is going to practice meditation and develop concentration and wisdom, it's essential to keep at least 5 precepts, which are to refrain from killing, to refrain from stealing, to refrain from adultery, to refrain from wrong speech or lying, and other kinds of speech as well. But it's all kind of included as lying or wrong speech, and to refrain from the use of drugs and intoxicants. So those are the basic lay precepts, and this is enough to establish, this foundation in sila is enough to build concentration and wisdom. However, here in the context of a retreat center where we're staying 24 hours a day, it's better to keep 8 precepts as we just took. So we refrain completely from sexual intercourse, from sexual activity, instead of just refraining from adultery. And then we add 3 more rules in addition, which are to limit our eating from the times between dawn and noon. So to not eat an evening meal. This gives us more time for practice. And then also to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment is a simple way to put it. That we don't, turn on the music tape, and we don't go out to concerts and so on. Of course, we use things that are considered cosmetics just to keep ourselves clean or to keep ourselves from offending others. It's not for beautification per se, to use something that many things have a fragrance is what I'm trying to say. So we may be using shampoos or body wash that have some slight fragrance, but we're mainly trying to keep ourselves clean and keep ourselves from offending others. So even though it has a small scent, it doesn't constitute breaking the precepts against beautification. And then adornment, not wearing jewelry, especially gold and silver, things like that. So those are the 8, and then not sleeping on a high and luxurious bed. That means usually if people have a very comfortable place to sleep, they may want to stay there more, and we have to devote our time to practice, although we get a normal amount of sleep. And then also if we have a very big bed, we may feel lonely, and we may want somebody else to be in the bed with us. So here we are not having a partner, so we are trying to stay by ourselves and focus on our own meditation practice. So for yogis, we undertake this rule of not sleeping on a high and luxurious bed. So whether we are keeping 5 precepts or 8 precepts, the precepts of the 9 precepts, as we keep here, in addition, the 9th precept is not one I usually take, so that's why I forgot. Sorry. But whatever precepts we undertake, we should try to keep them purely, because they are the foundation for our building concentration. And simply by taking them, our sila becomes complete. So from that point, we just try to keep them, and we repeat the rules every day so that they can get refreshed. So morality it's very good to keep this level of morality, not harming others. And just in itself, it's a very delightful thing. But morality is just the foundation. Just like a foundation in a house is not enough to live in. It's the same with our spiritual work. Morality is not enough. We still need to build further. The way in a house you need to, on top of the foundation, you need to build walls, a door, windows, and so on, maybe multiple stories. On top of our sila, we need to build concentration and wisdom. Because what can happen is the sila commits ourselves to a restraint of body and speech. But the mind is not necessarily controlled by that. So the mind can still be wanting to harm others, wanting to kill, wanting to steal, etc. So without concentration and wisdom, we could get into the situation of breaking our sila if our emotions were very strong. They could lead us to give in to them, so that we, either being consumed by desire or being consumed by anger or being so confused that we don't really know what is right or what is wrong. So that's why we need to go further than just developing sila. And morality is the foundation for vipassana practice. The training of concentration stabilizes the mind so that unwholesome mind states don't arise. However, when the momentum of concentration fades or breaks, then unwholesome states can arise. It doesn't permanently eradicate unwholesome tendencies. And concentration, on top of concentration, we need concentration, even though it has its limits. It's a necessary foundation for us to develop wisdom. So morality is the foundation that is necessary for developing concentration. And concentration must be developed in order to develop wisdom. Wisdom is what can uproot the tendencies to unwholesome things. It can uproot greed, anger, delusion. And during the practice, it uproots them. It uproots them in a temporary way. It dispels them in a temporary way, and then they can be permanently eradicated when there's realization of past knowledge. At the conclusion, at the maturity of vipassana knowledge, past knowledge and fruition, realization of nibbana occur. And during past knowledge is when unwholesome tendencies can be uprooted permanently. So this type of concentration and wisdom is developed through vipassana practice. So now I would like to speak about vipassana practice based on a talk that Mahasi Sayadaw gave over the radio in Burma, probably in the 1950s. The government asked him to give a talk over the radio that lasted only 15 minutes and described the Vipassana practice in a way that anyone from any walk of life could understand it and do it in their own home. And our context is a little bit different in that we are not doing practice only 1 hour a day. We're going to do it according to an intensive schedule. But I think you'll find this a useful talk. So Mahasi Sayadaw would ordinarily give many textual references from the Pali to support. He didn't just speak from his own ideas. He quoted the Buddha in what he said. But as this is a very short talk, he said he's not going to do that here. He just used 3 words from the Buddha. The Buddha said, Sato Sampajano Vihareya. And word by word that means Vihareya, one should dwell. Sato, being mindful. Sampajano, and clearly comprehending. So one should dwell, being mindful, and clearly comprehending. And the Buddha also added, this is my repeated instruction for your sake. The 2 words, sato and sampajano, that is to be mindful and comprehend clearly, are so full of meaning that in essence they encompass all of the Buddha's teachings, the entire Tipitaka. They also express the whole of Vipassana practice in brief. Therefore, this practice of being mindful and clearly comprehending is the most important task in the teaching of the Buddha. If you are able to be mindful and comprehending clearly on all occasions, at all times, you will be well established in the truth. That means you will become one of the 4 kinds of enlightened beings, namely a Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, or Arahanta. If you become at least a Sotapanna, the lowest level of enlightened being, you will no longer be liable to rebirth in the lower realms of Apaya. Therefore, it is very important to practice Vipassana to a satisfactory level if you want to be free from the danger of woeful rebirth. And I would like to add that even if you don't believe in rebirth, it still makes this life a very beautiful life. So it is worth it to practice. Don't be caught up in, is there a life after this one or not? Just understand that the practice will develop concentration and wisdom, morality, concentration, and wisdom to the fullest, which is a beautiful thing. There are 6 kinds of objects of which to be mindful and comprehend clearly. That is, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch, and perception or thinking. These 6 objects are called the objects of the 6 sense doors. Every time you fail to be aware of these 6 kinds of psychophysical phenomena arising at the 6 sense doors, you develop the false sense of permanence, pleasure, and self. This delusion gives rise to an assortment of mental defilements that are called in Pali kilesas. Due to kilesas, we create karma, that is action with intention. And that karma prolongs the cycle of samsara, the cycle of rebirth and suffering. So if you are mindful, knowing every psychophysical phenomenon arising and passing away at each moment, there will be no opportunity for kilesas, karma, and samsara, the cycle of existence, to arise. Therefore, seeing should be noted at the eye door as seeing, the moment that seeing takes place. Hearing should be noted at the ear door as hearing, the moment it takes place. Smelling should be noted at the nose door as smelling, the moment it takes place. Tasting should be noted at the tongue door as tasting, the moment it takes place. Touch or bodily sensation should be noted at the body door, wherever on the body it occurs, as touching, the moment it takes place. Regarding touch, there are many kinds of touch or bodily sensation to observe because the body is very big compared to the remaining sense doors. Touch can take place in or on any part of the body, from head to toe, inner or outer, wherever sensitive flesh and skin exist. These are all objects to be observed. In general, touch becomes apparent to us every time there is bending of an arm, stretching of an arm or leg, for example, walking, standing, sitting, reclining, when the abdomen rises, when the abdomen falls, and so on. Therefore, we should be mindful and clearly comprehend all our activities by noting them as they are. Bending, stretching, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, rising, falling, and so on. We should also be aware of thoughts at the mind door. The mind door is the subconscious mind, called in Pali Bhavanga consciousness. We should be aware of thoughts at the mind door every time we think. Note the thinking mind as thinking, planning, imagining, and so on at the moment it takes place. This is called Chittanupassana, or awareness of the mind. So now I have explained the basic method of Vipassana practice. By following this method, you can develop insight knowledge stage by stage, from the insight into mind and body, the distinction between mind and body, up until path, fruition, and enlightenment. However, in the beginning of the practice, concentration and awareness are not yet strong enough for you to observe and clearly comprehend all the phenomena that arise at the six sense doors. Therefore, you should start with a few simple, obvious objects, rather than fine and subtle ones. Moreover, the body is easier to observe than the mind. Therefore, a beginner is instructed to start with physical objects rather than mental ones. Even so, physical phenomena, known in Pali as upada rupa, or dependent matter, that is, the sense doors, things like the eyes and the ears, and the sense objects, the visual object, the sound, and so on. This type of matter is called dependent matter. And these are still too subtle for a beginner to observe. There are four fundamental elements that make up touch, or tangible objects. And these are more obvious and easier to observe. If you contemplate the body, these are the first phenomena that you will experience. So I should say the four elements. The element of earth, temperature, the element of air, and the element of water. But just keep in mind there. Just put that on hold for a moment. Okay. And if you contemplate the body, These are the first phenomena you will experience. Therefore, you should start Vipassana practice by being mindful of touch that manifests when you perform bodily actions. And this is the principle. And then I will explain after that how to practice. Here we are doing intensive practice where we alternate sitting and walking, roughly 1 hour each, all day long. We try to be continually practicing during our waking hours. But as this talk was aimed for people who only have part-time, perhaps, Mahasi Sayadaw continued by saying, after work or daily chores, everyone should find a quiet place to practice Vipassana for an hour or so, even if the whole day or night is not available. When you first sit down to practice, you should inspire yourself by reflecting that you are going to practice Vipassana that can lead you to the attainment of past knowledge, fruition knowledge, enlightenment, and freedom from woeful rebirth. Then focus your attention on the whole body and note it as sitting. You should note mentally, not verbally. Here, to note it means to make yourself aware of it. Therefore, every time you note sitting, you should make sure you are fully aware of the body as though you were seeing it with your eyes. If you are sitting cross-legged, the lower part of the body manifests with crossed legs and the upper body in an upright, rigid position. When your concentration and awareness become strong, you will be able to experience what is called in Pali paramattha, or real physical elements involved, such as tension, tightness, and so on. These elements occur anew every moment as a result of the mental state of wanting to be in a sitting posture. Therefore, focus on the entire body. Try to keep on noting sitting. If it is too easy or boring to note only the sitting posture, then you may note touching in alternation, shifting your attention to the touch point between your two hands, or the feeling of the buttocks touching the floor, or any other touch point on the body that is apparent to you. You should make sure you are fully aware of touching and then go back to noting sitting. You should note sitting and touching in rotation as sitting, touching. Similarly, when lying down, you can note lying and touching as lying, touching. If it becomes boring to note sitting, touching, or lying, touching like this, you may note the rising and falling of the abdomen, which may be even easier than noting sitting, lying, and touching. Focus on the abdomen and note it as rising, falling. This is how we're all instructed in this center and in the Mahasi Center. We instruct yogis to start their practice noting the rising and the falling movement of the abdomen. If you put your mind on the abdomen, you will experience its rising movement and falling movement that happens along with the in-breath and the out-breath. If the abdominal movement is not obvious, touch the abdomen lightly with the palm of your hand until its movement becomes apparent. You should follow the rising and falling movement mentally, all the way from the very beginning to the end. You should try your best to feel it as clearly as if you were seeing it with your eyes. While noting like this, you will find your mind often wanders away. Naturally, The mind is jumping around all the time. While your body is in the room, your mind may go somewhere in the village or the city or to your office. You should note the thinking mind as thinking, thinking, planning, planning, and so on, every time it becomes obvious to you. Then go back to the primary object of the rising movement and falling movement and note it as rising, falling, rising, falling. Being aware of the mind or thoughts is called Chittanupassana. After some time, you will experience unpleasant sensations such as stiffness, numbness, aches, itchiness, and so on. They should be noted as stiffness, numbness, aching, and so on. When concentration and awareness become powerful, these kinds of unpleasant sensations will fade away when noted. Then you should go back to the primary object, the rising and falling of the abdomen. This awareness of pleasant and unpleasant sensation is called Vedananupassana. If pain becomes unbearable and you want to change your posture, first you should note this mental state itself as wanting to change, wanting to change. Then change your posture, noting all the activities involved as they are. For example, you may be lifting up the hand, or stretching it out, or bending, and so on. You must do all the activities slowly and mindfully. If you do things quickly, you will not be aware of any of the phenomena involved. When you want to get up at the end of the sitting, first note wanting to get up, and then get up, focusing the attention on the body as it rises up gradually. Having reached a standing posture, note it as standing, focusing on the whole body as it is upright. And if you happen to see someone pass by, note it as seeing. When you walk, slow down your steps and pay full attention to the foot that is moving. Note it as walking, or right step, left step. You should try your best to be aware of the foot moving forward gradually, all the way from the moment it lifts off the ground until it presses down on the ground at the end of the step. So to summarize the things that we note, in brief, whenever you're walking, note it as walking, or right step, left step, or as lifting, moving, and placing, and so on, continuously. When sitting, if there is nothing special to note, just note rising, falling, without a break. If the wandering mind arises, note it as wandering, thinking, and then go back to rising and falling. If any kind of unpleasant sensation arises, such as stiffness, numbness, aches, pains, and so on, note them as they are, then go back to the rising and falling movement of the abdomen. You should note general activities such as bending, stretching, moving, arranging your limbs, and so on, then go back to the rising and falling. So in this talk, when it's done for daily practice, if you practice this way for an hour or so every day, your concentration and awareness will become stronger day by day. This will lead to the remarkable experience of Vipassana insight. The progressive development of Vipassana insights will lead you to the attainment of Nibbana. I hope you are happy to have learned the method of Vipassana practice that can lead you to freedom from the danger of rebirth in the lower realms. You should put great effort into the practice with strong faith and confidence. May you all be able to practice Vipassana all your waking hours in this retreat, and at least an hour a day at home, with strong faith until you experience path, fruition, and nibbana.